The blessing after the offering. The sun shone brightly through the stained glass windows of the small church, casting colorful patterns on the wooden pews. Amelia sat quietly with her young daughter beside her, trying to focus on the pastor's words, but her mind was miles away. The rent was due next week, and her paycheck barely covered food and utilities. Life as a single mother had always been a struggle, but lately the weight felt unbearable. She glanced down at the crumbled $5 bill in her hand. It was all she had left until payday, which was still days away. That $5 was supposed to stretch for milk and bread. Amelia's heart ached. How had she come to this point? She had always worked hard, but between rising bills and her daughter's needs, it seemed like she was constantly falling behind. As the ushers began to walk down the aisle with the offering plates, Amelia's chest tightened. She had been raised to give, to trust in God's provision, but today was different. Her finances were in such dire straits that part of her wanted to hold on to that last $5 with all her might. Every dollar mattered, especially when it was your last. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. The pastor's voice echoed throughout the sanctuary, but the words barely registered. Amelia was wrestling with herself. Could she really afford to give this small offering, knowing it might mean going without for the next few days? The offering plate grew closer, and her palms grew sweaty. She could feel her daughter's small hand clutching her own, looking up at her innocently, unaware of the burden her mother carried. Amelia's mind raced. God, if I give this, how will I make it? She prayed silently, her heart heavy with doubt. The plate was now just a few feet away, and she realized she had to make a choice. With a deep breath, Amelia closed her eyes for a moment, releasing the fear. I will trust you, Lord, she whispered, placing the $5 bill into the plate as it passed by. As the offering moved on, she felt an odd sense of peace wash over her. It didn't make logical sense, but for the first time that day, she didn't feel weighed down by worry. The service ended, and Amelia gathered her daughter's things, preparing for the long walk home. As they exited the church, the bright afternoon sun greeted them. She couldn't help but wonder if she had made the right decision. The $5 was gone, and there was no turning back. But just as she reached the sidewalk, something unexpected happened. Amelia! A familiar voice called out from behind. She turned to see Mrs. Johnson, a kindly older woman from church, hurrying toward her. I was hoping I'd catch you before you left, Mrs. Johnson said, slightly out of breath. I've been meaning to talk to you for a while now. I know things have been hard for you since your husband left. But I wanted you to know that the church community cares about you. Amelia nodded, unsure of what to say. Listen, Mrs. Johnson continued, fumbling with her purse. I've been praying, and today I felt a strong nudge from the Lord to give you this. She handed Amelia an envelope. Confused, Amelia took it, not knowing what to expect. She opened it cautiously, and her breath caught in her throat. Inside was a check for $500. Tears welled up in Amelia's eyes as she looked at Mrs. Johnson, speechless. I don't know why, but I felt like God wanted me to bless you today. I hope this helps in some small way, Mrs. Johnson said, her voice kind and full of warmth. Amelia stood frozen for a moment, overwhelmed by the sudden blessing. She had given $5, her very last, and in return, she had received 100-fold. She thought back to her quiet prayer in the pew. She had doubted, she had feared, but God had shown her that He was faithful, even when it made no sense. As she walked home with her daughter, Amelia felt lighter, her steps full of hope. The weight of her financial struggles was still there, but now something had shifted. It wasn't just about the money, it was about trust, about letting go of control and letting God work in ways beyond her understanding. That evening, as Amelia sat in her small living room watching her daughter play, she reflected on the day's events. She had almost clung to that $5 out of fear, but instead, she had chosen faith, and God had met her in her need with more than she could have imagined. Sometimes, she realized, it wasn't about the size of the offering, it was about the size of the heart that gave it. Amelia smiled, knowing that no matter what came next, she could trust in the God who provides. The following week, when Amelia went into work, something even more unexpected happened. She was called into her boss's office for a meeting. Nervous, she assumed it was just another discussion about the company's budget cuts. But to her surprise, her boss smiled warmly. "Amelia, we've been noticing how hard you've been working lately, and we'd like to offer you a promotion. It comes with a raise and some additional benefits. You've more than earned it." Amelia blinked, stunned. The promotion came with a significant increase in pay, more than she had ever expected. As she walked out of the office, a mixture of joy and disbelief overwhelmed her. She had given her last $5, trusting God would provide. And in return, not only had she received an unexpected blessing from Mrs. Johnson, but now she was walking in a blessing that would help her support her daughter in ways she hadn't thought possible. Amelia smiled as she thought, God truly is faithful, far beyond what we can see.